It is such a special experience to be pregnant. Like it is so special to feel the baby moving around in there and to be able to connect even before the baby's born. So I was like, no, I know anything could happen, and let's choose to celebrate.
Who your family needs you to be and who you think your family needs you to be sometimes are the same, sometimes are very different.
I love you, Mom.
Bringing a second baby into your home changes everything. The way you parent shifts, your marriage gets tested in new ways, and your firstborn, they're feeling it too. If you're in this transition or about to be, today's episode will help you navigate the challenges without letting resentment, exhaustion, or guilt take over.
Welcome back to Home on the Rock, where we talk about real struggles in marriage after becoming parents and how to strengthen your relationship during this stormy season. Today, we're tackling a huge shift that no one prepares you for, the transition from one child to two. If you've already done it, you know what we're talking about. And if you're about to, our hope is that this episode is going to save you from a lot of unnecessary stress.
When we went from 1 to 2, we thought, okay, we've done this before. We know what to expect. But the reality is it's a completely different ballgame. We're going to talk about how to navigate the overwhelm, the dynamic between the two kiddos, and how to stay connected to your partner, your firstborn, and yourself.
Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future episodes. And if you've made this transition already, let us know in the comments, what was the biggest surprise for you?
Parents of 2 or more, what was the hardest adjustment for you? Let's help the parents that are about to go through this.
What's one strategy that helped keep your marriage strong after welcoming baby number 2? Share in the comments.
One mistake parents make from going from 1 to 2 kids.
How do you stop your toddler from resenting their new sibling?
The number one thing that keeps marriages strong after baby number 2.
All right, babe, let's talk about what life is like for somebody who's maybe pregnant right now. And they're like, okay, going from 0 to 1 was like 0 to 100. Is going from 1 to 2 like 0 to 5,000 or 100 to 5,000?
Well, I remember first the changes started happening. I started noticing how different it was in pregnancy. Because when I was pregnant with our first baby, I was able to rest a lot. And most women are very tired during their first and third trimesters of pregnancy. And for me, having a toddler to care for on top of pregnancy tiredness, and also I was very nauseous, like very sick until 17 weeks with the pregnancy with our second baby. And it's a whole different ballgame. And for me, it was interesting because it always felt with our first, like I was meeting my limits. Like I couldn't possibly handle anymore. And then the gift of the second baby is I realized, wow, I get to keep expanding. Like there is more. I am capable of more. And I can be sick and still care for our child. And I can be tired and still care for our toddler. And the care for him during that time included a lot of surrender. Our firstborn at that time of when I was pregnant, he was 3.5 when our baby was born. So he would have been close to 3 years old. Yeah. So, and I know this dynamic will be different depending on how old that first child is when second baby comes. And it involved a lot of surrender, caring for him during that time. And that was a challenge. And I also built some confidence during that time. So I'm like, if I can feel like this and still manage to care for my toddler, then I'm capable of more than I thought.
Yeah, I remember both pregnancies you were pretty sick. What I remember was that the first pregnancy you ate a lot of Mexican food.
Yeah.
And he came out pretty spicy. The second pregnancy, the second baby that we had, you ate a lot more sushi.
Yeah, I broke a lot more rules.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a common thing. Like if you're going from 1 to 2, I remember our first baby, we took every picture of every weekly milestone and posted all of them on Facebook. Baby number 2, I think it was like he's born and then that was it.
Oh, look, he turned 1.
We kind of
Yeah,
jumped
that
ahead and skipped
changes.
ahead in the story
Yeah.
a little bit
Changes.
there. So, okay, so tell me, like, what were some of the things that you were most afraid of when you were pregnant with baby number 2 before we brought him home?
I don't know if you remember some of the conversations that we had. I remember us both being afraid or not being able to understand how we could possibly love another baby as much as we loved our first one. I'm like, oh my gosh, how could I possibly? Like, I love our first baby so much. And I don't know if that's a common thing. I've heard other people say that they experienced that. But I remember having that conversation of like, how could another baby like have any of our heart? I feel like we've given it all to him. And that was really on my mind. And I was fearful of that. And I remember just feeling this insane expansion. And that fear, once our second baby was moving in in my tummy, and I was connecting with him. Like, I remember being in the swimming pool and feeling his little kicks, and I'm like, oh, he loves water. And like, I was really connecting with him while he takes me back. I was really connecting with him while he was in my belly. And I just remember that fear going away while pregnant, because my heart really did expand so big. And so anyone who is afraid of bringing that second baby and afraid you won't have enough love to give, love expands. Love knows no limits. And there will always be more. It will just multiply. It doesn't get divided. And that was a big lesson that I learned in bringing a second baby home. What fears do you remember having when I was pregnant?
Well, I think after the miscarriage, there was one of what could possibly go wrong now that we've experienced that. I know that was something I never even considered. I never even thought of during our first pregnancy. It was like the perfect pregnancy. And then after losing that baby, I was kind of a little bit on the edge of my seat, a little bit like, whoa. So there was that for me. And then you just take it week by week and you go to each appointment and you get through each milestone. And then before we had the second baby, I was just thinking of, wow, how am I going to keep up with my energy? And I remember with our first, could just give everything to him, could spend all that time with him. And I'm like, okay, there's one, like 1 + 1 doesn't feel like 2 here. 1 + 1 feels like 5 when it comes to having kids after having had our first. And so there was this level of extreme excitement because I was like, is he going to be the same? Are they going to be different? What about navigating their differences? Like I'm already so tight with this one. What if I don't get along with the other one? Like what's that going to be like? And so there was those kind of fears around things are already going really well. Like, I don't know if I want to rock the boat. And here we are. Like, we wanted him to have another sibling. We so badly wanted him to have somebody else that he could play with and somebody close to his age. So that worked out. And at the same time, I was starting to think like, well, what about brothers are going to fight, boys argue. How are we going to navigate the dynamic of them, whether they get along or not? So those were some of my fears, were how am I going to deal with time and my attention and being able to give it to both? And at least I knew that, we weren't going from 1 to 3, like we weren't having twins. So we didn't have to play zone coverage. We could still play man to man. And we talked a lot about dividing and conquering. And I think now that we've been in it for a little while, we can see really what that entails, because how do we fit more car seats in the car? What about going on trips? Like all the multiplication questions that came up or that come up when you're thinking about going from 1 to 2, like 2x everything. Those were fears and concerns that I wasn't sure how we were going to navigate. And what's beautiful is, as parents, it's kind of like entrepreneurship. You get that plane up in the air, like you're pregnant, and okay, we'll figure out how to fly this thing while it's up in the air. There's no manual, there's no instructions on how to do it, but God equips us because it's our gift to figure it out, to learn and to grow through it. And I think that I had all those fears going from 1 to 2. And really, I'd say like the biggest one was how am I going to have enough energy for 2 kids and not just one?
I remember even in church recently, we were talking about what you feed grows. We can either choose to feed our fears, or we can choose to be courageous and to focus on the promises that God has for us. And I think it's very natural in the season where we're stepping into the unknown of like, wow, we're like, especially like miscarriage, where you spoke about actually having that in our mind now of, whoa, we could lose this baby. Like we lost the last baby. Like, and I remember when we first found out we were pregnant, and there's so many people that were really shocked that we shared it so early. I think, I mean, immediately when I had like the positive pregnancy test, maybe 4 or 5 of them, because I loved taking them and seeing it pop up pregnant. And then after like our first appointment, I mean, we shared it. And a lot of people say, oh, wait till 12 weeks to share because you don't really know what's going to happen. And everybody gets to make that determination for themselves. I know that you can lose a baby at any time. And it doesn't matter if it's the very beginning of the pregnancy. Yes, odds are higher. And if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and it's going to be painful at any point in the pregnancy. And to have this idea that you have to suffer through if you did lose the baby alone or secretly is very interesting. Now, if you share, I'm pregnant, and then you're going to end up having conversations where people ask you how it's going, you'll have to share over and over again, yes, like we lost the baby, we lost the baby, we lost the baby. So I can understand why people wait sometimes, and why we chose to not wait to share that is because in that moment, I was like, no, I know that we can't control what's going to happen here. It's in God's hands. It's not in our hands. And I'm going to choose to celebrate. Even just the fact that I have this baby in my belly is like celebrate every moment, because it is such a special experience to be pregnant. Like it is so special to feel the baby moving around in there and to be able to connect even before the baby's born. So I was like, no, I know anything could happen, and let's choose to celebrate from as soon as we find out. Like, let's choose to celebrate and focus on that. And even though we had these fears, it was important for us to not let those run the show, because the baby can feel that too. The baby can feel fear and anxiousness and all of those things. And so what do you remember after our pregnancy, after having the baby in the hospital? Like that was a whole different experience too, because it's kind of that first pulling away. And it's not a pulling away, but it kind of was in a sense of like from our toddler. Right? It's like you've had us to yourself all this time, and we're going to the hospital without you. We're going to have a new baby when we come home. So how does one navigate that? And I remember before we went to the hospital, we really talked to our firstborn a lot, and we shared with him some of the things to expect. Do you remember?
Well, that's something that has worked really well with him, is pre-framing.
Yeah.
Right. So we do it in a lot of different situations where we will tell him ahead of time and prepare him and have these conversations to kind of like set the frame of the situation that we're going into, whether it's a trip to Disney or whether it's a movie that we're going to go to now with his younger sibling, like what that could look like, all the different types of pre-framing. And what I remember about pre-framing with courage is that things are going to be different. And I think that's all we really knew at that time, because we didn't know exactly how different they would be, like what it would look like. We just knew that they were going to be different. And as much as we could prepare a 2.5-year-old, I think at the time, what that really means, maybe you can go further into that, because I just remember saying, dude, Like, things are going to be different. You're going to have a little brother, and it's going to be great. There's going to be more toys. There's going to be more fun, and there's, it was kind of like that. Like, I didn't know really what to say to prepare him because I don't think we fully really knew.
I do remember being very intentional during that time.
I'm glad you were.
But
I think I had no idea what to expect.
neither of us quite knew. In fact, I remember seeing a mom at the park, and I saw that she had 2 kids, and one of them was like a little baby and one of them was a toddler. And I remember walking up to her and being like, what's it like? I wanted to know. I wanted to ask every mom that I saw, because it was so hard to wrap my head around what it would really be like to give to 2 when it felt like we were giving everything to 1. And when it came to preparing our firstborn, I remember really encouraging teamwork right out of the gate. Like, hey, this baby in my belly, have him know your voice. He's a gift for all of us. Like, God gave him to all of us. Aren't we so excited? And I remember asking him, what would you want to name him? Like, what, and what nickname would you give him? Or just, and I remember he came up with the name Facey Face. He would talk to the baby. He'd put his little hands on my belly. He'd say, hi, Facey Face. And so we got a little blanket made with the name Facey Face on it. And that was the baby's special blanket so Courage could send it with us to the hospital. So it was like he was there with us, even though he wasn't. And I remember just doing as much as we could, speaking to him ahead of time that we're all in this together. And this baby is all of ours and a gift. And it's going to be a challenge for all of us as well. So not just painting it as like, this is going to be so rosy all the time. Like, I really wanted him to understand that we were a team and that there were going to be some changes that might be uncomfortable and that we were going to work through them together. And I know somebody listening might be like, you talk to your 3-year-old like that? And the answer is yes. They really understand far more than many people give them credit. And I'm really grateful that we went into the transition like that. And even when it came to like, hey, there's going to be a night where Daddy and we leave to go to the hospital, and your grandmas are going to be here to be with you, and you get to enjoy your time with them. And as soon as the baby's born, you get to come to the hospital and meet him, and we're going to be away for a few days. And when we get home, things are going to be different, and it's probably going to be 5 days, 5 sleeps, or however we described it back then. But I do think that really helped.
Well, and I think one of the things that you were really good about too, and it was cool that I first learned about this concept in the book Atomic Habits, is like one of the biggest ways to create behavior change is to have a shift in identity. And immediately we started saying, you're going to be a big brother. You're going to have this little guy that looks up to you. You're going to have a little brother that follows you around, and you get to teach. You get to show him things. You get to model for him what it looks like to be a great big brother. And teaching him Courage, our oldest, and starting to pre-frame that he's a leader, that he gets to play with his younger brother, that he gets to show him things, that he gets to teach him things, and that inclusiveness that you really had with him, I think was really cool. And us starting to shape his identity around being somebody that really gets to have an impact and contribute to somebody else's life was really cool. So I do remember you doing that.
Well,
I do remember you doing that.
And that we need him.
Yeah.
He's a valuable part of the team.
For sure.
We need him. And his baby brother needs him. He really took that on, that identity of big brother and leader, almost too much at times. We have to remind him he's not the boss. When we're in the room, we're like, hey, we got this. It is really sweet. It is really sweet to see how he has taken that on. And even when the little one was, really starting to learn to talk, and, I would walk in the room and see Courage working with him and say it like this, or pretending to be reading him books, or, he'd go through and point to the pictures and tell them what they were. And he really has been a help in having our little one talk and walk through life confidently. And it's been really special to watch them together. So I'm grateful that we prepared him the way that we did.
Let me ask you this. What do you think was the biggest change to our marriage that occurred after we went from 1 to 2?
We did things a little better the second time than the first time, meaning we were more of a team. We learned our first time what not to do. And specifically regarding sleep and overnights and different things like that. And the impact on our marriage with our second coming into the picture. Yes, of course, there are strains that exist because the freedom that we were starting to feel as our babies were as our first was a little bit older, kind of gets taken back a little bit. You kind of go back to square one with like that freedom feeling. And so the strain, I'd say the difference in like the strain of like time, like how do we make time for each other, was there. How we navigated that was a lot of grace and knowing that this was not going to be like this forever. And once you've had your first child, you understand that more. The first go of it, we didn't get that. With our second child, I remember feeling more like a team. I remember feeling stressed out, like I didn't want you to leave the house and leave me alone with two. I was like, this is so hard. At first, it really was. And you were great about, yes, working and getting the things done that needed to get done. But as for like extracurriculars, you weren't adding golf to your schedule. You weren't out of the house in those first 4 months any more than you had to be. Like we were there together, and we were a team. And when it came to sleep, we had more grace, even for when it came to, hey, every other wake up. Like we were more prepared. Every other wake up, you'll get 4 hours and then I'll get 4 hours if the baby's waking up every 2 hours. Or we just had some of those things figured out. So I'd say like what changed in our relationship, we were struggling with intimacy big time in the physical sense of sex. My libido was non-existent. And that started with baby number 1. Miscarriage really rocked that. And when we got pregnant with baby number 2, I was actually surprised. I think we were both very surprised that we were pregnant because we were having so little sex. So when it comes to the impact of this next baby on our intimacy, it just made that part, the sexual part, harder. But our emotional friendship bond grew stronger, I'd say. There was more respect. We learned a lot. We were a great team and we were exhausted. And we were also in a lot of conversations of like, hey, we're not okay with sex not being present in our marriage. We're not okay with that. And we'll get there. And then we started researching, and we won't go into all of that and how we healed and repaired that. Like that'll be another conversation for another time. But I would say that was another negative, a negative impact of that second baby was our physical, sexual intimacy grew more distant because we were already struggling, and just the actual time together that we had to invest with each other got more distant. And the other thing is like time to work out and do like the quote unquote like self-care. We got rocked in that again. And so there were those challenges.
Well, I think like what you just alluded to is really clear to me. That was so different in terms of the impact on our marriage going from baby number 1 to number 2, and what was different. So many mistakes made with baby number 1. I remember after that, we that's when we got to like one of the darkest points in our marriage was after the miscarriage. There was, almost no intimacy between us. We still loved each other
So much.
right? And being in the same house, there were times where we didn't get along. and we were arguing about, kind of what we thought was maybe like small things. And it seemed like you were kind of saying like this, like almost permanence to it. Like, is this going to get better? Are we going to improve? And I was fearful of that for sure. Now that we're talking about it, I remember being afraid of like, whoa, okay, this has been really hard on us, baby number one. This miscarriage has been really hard. Are things going to get better when we have baby number two? And before he came along, I think we had some revelation, which was really great. That really helped me recommit and help us get into a better spot. And what I'll say the impact was learning from the mistakes of what I did during those really hard months after we had the first baby, and some of the agreements that we had made, and then changing those and pivoting and adapting and being flexible with some of that allowed for, wow, this was hard. Baby number one was hard. With baby number two, I'm going to show up differently. And I can say for me, I think what I learned from baby number one into baby number two was being loving to you was showing up in a way that you needed me, not in the way that I thought you needed me or I thought I'd be willing to do. There was a much greater willingness, I would say, with baby number two, like you were saying, willing to get up as frequently as I needed to, willing to, switch every other night, whatever we had to do, whatever was being asked of us to work as a team. I was more willing because I saw how hard baby number one was, and I had a different perspective going into baby number two, I remember. So if you're going from 1 to 2 and you're like, whoa, this has been super hard, it's beautiful that you get to learn from that. It's beautiful that you have a chance to show up differently if you've made a lot of mistakes, because I know I did. And whether it was the miscarriage or whether it was learning that baby duty is a 24-hour job, and even if you work a 16-hour long day, whatever it is that you do, I'm not saying that's hard, or I'm not saying that isn't hard. I'm not saying that isn't demanding, but having that perspective shift from, whoa, like baby duty really is a 24-hour job, and then being able to show up for you in a much more loving way. I think what that did was that actually helped you build respect for me.
Yeah.
And having that love and respect dynamic in a much stronger, healthier place for baby number two, I think was probably one of the biggest differences than baby number one, because we kind of had no idea what to expect. And so I fumbled through it in a lot of ways. And then baby number two, I was like, okay, I get to show up differently. And I did. And I think that was having that experience, being able to learn from that was like really big.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so hard in so many ways and so much better in so many ways. It's like a second chance, And I remember there were just so many dynamics different. And I know that's going to be true for anyone listening. We all are going to have different circumstances. And our particular circumstance with number one, in that we had no family living near us within 2 hours, 2.5 hours was like the closest family member. We had a lot of close friends that we loved. And when you have a baby, friends are not the same as family. Family is so important. And yes, there can be amazing friends, and our friends were helpful. And there's nothing quite like having grandma near. There's just nothing like it. And so when we were third trimester pregnant with our second born, we moved. We moved from Colorado. We moved to Omaha, Nebraska to be close to your mother. And that was also a game changer. We had a couple of things. We had her, and then we also had your brothers nearby. One of the things that there was to navigate after bringing the second baby home is the dynamic of, for me as a mom, I'm like, I had so much one-on-one time with my first newborn. I gave him everything. I was able to do that. And I'm like, how I was craving one-on-one time. And at the same time, feeling so guilty because my toddler wasn't getting me during that time. I'm like, how do we navigate this? And at this point now, our toddler's 3.5. We had found some childcare even outside of grandma that we trusted and loved. And so I would bring her over some of the days of the week to spend one-on-one time with our toddler, so I could be one-on-one with our baby and you could be working. And then I knew that our toddler was getting love and one-on-one attention. And that was really cool. And then we'd also ask his uncle, hey, come over and spend a few hours with Courage. Do a science experiment with him. Do something. Because with a newborn, the last thing you want to do is like something like a science experiment or whatever. I mean, for me, I kind of wanted to like stay in and sleep and sit around without having to put clothes on and have my breastfeeding pumps on and like just like it takes so much effort to get dressed and go out. And of course we would like go on our walks or different things like that. But when it came to like giving our toddler what he really needed, and like I brought in other people, we brought in other people to help us with that. And that was really great. Like I didn't really let anyone besides you and me and grandma's hold our second born or like care for him until he was, at least 3 months old. That was sacred, special time. And that worked out really well to make sure that they both had what they needed. And I got that one-on-one time, and Courage wasn't like feeling the void so much because he was doing something fun.
Now, that's still a tough dynamic to navigate, is giving the baby the attention that they need and require because they're not nearly as independent as the older child. And then the older child sometimes saying things like, oh, I miss you, or I wish we could do that, or any of those things. I know one of the big things that we learned early on was a phrase that really stuck with us, and maybe you can talk about it a little bit, was like, don't blame the baby. Right? Because that dynamic, some things we just can't control. But one of the things that we can control is how we talk about one child to the other. And blaming the baby is something that I think I would have totally been doing it all the time on accident if I never heard this phrase and what that actually means. Like, because it's natural to say when your older one is like, hey, can I play with these toys? And you're like, oh no, they're way too small. They're a choking hazard for your brother, so we can't have them out. You can't play with Legos. And right there, what did I do? I said, oh, because your brother could choke on them, you can't do this thing. And naturally, what would that create when he hears that sort of thing over and over and over? He's going to resent his brother or his sister or whatever.
Oh, like, can we go to the park? Sorry, no, the baby's napping. That's blaming the baby, right? Unintentionally. It's the truth. We're not saying you can't tell them the truth. They're just more eloquent, intentional ways of saying it that doesn't directly blame the baby in a sense of like, oh, can we go to the park? Actually, let's enjoy some quiet time together right now. I'm so excited. Let's do something special indoors right now.
Or yeah, let's go to the park. Let's do it when your brother gets up from his nap here in like an hour.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a lot of fun. For now, instead, like we're gonna do this.
Yeah. That's something that that I think we've been really intentional with as well, is our language around don't blame the baby, and our language in general of, just really embracing and understanding that they're both always listening. Like even before the younger one is talking, they're absorbing everything. And this is our special opportunity before they're 7 years old to really shape and form and strengthen their confidence, their identity, their personality, like all of these things to teach them who they are, whose they are, and who they are to each other, and to like speak life over them and about them to each other. One of the things that I notice is, people tend to really swoon over a baby. Oh, he's so cute, and the toddler is used to being that baby. And to know that and to be intentional with like, yes, give that baby all the love. Don't withhold from the baby. And we can use, oh, I love you so much. I love you and your brother so much. You are both special. And, you can talk to the baby individually and inclusively at the same time. And the same, like, oh, your big brother, he's such a gift, or talking to the older child, oh, your baby brother, he's such a gift, to be able to talk even to each other as husband and wife about our children where we know they can hear us, and just to build them up. And especially when we see them doing something that's like a fruit of the spirit, I see our 2-year-old sharing with his big brother, and I'm just like, wow, did you see how generous Alchemy just was? Did you see how generous he just was? They're playing, they can hear us, and you just see their little face light up. We're very intentional with our language around the boys, and we're really, really trying to ensure that they're not resenting each other. We speak life into their future. We say, you guys get to be best friends forever. Like, how cool is that? You get to protect each other. Courage, one day Alchemy's going to be as tall as you, maybe even taller. You never know. Daddy's brothers are taller than him now, and they're younger than him. You never know. He might be taller than you one day. So it's really cool to be able to speak life over their relationship, speak life about them so they can hear it. And language is so important. So important.
That's been big. I'm so glad we heard that, because it was a game changer. I'm curious. So if somebody walked up to you at the park and they asked you, oh my gosh, you've got 2 kids, what was it harder going from 0 to 1 or going from 1 to 2? Like what could you tell the mom who's walking up to you at the park, just like you had all those questions asking you, like, what can I expect? What should I prepare for? What's going to be the biggest change?
The biggest change is recalibrating, is being okay with the structure and the freedom and all of these things that you feel like you've finally gotten back, or that you've finally built, or that you finally figured out, letting that all go and starting over. Yes, taking the things that you've learned, but just be prepared that none of that might work. Everything's about to change again, and to be flexible. That's really what I would share with the mama who's pregnant right now, is just to not cling to how things are, and to trust that just as she was able to get to the point of where she is, she's going to become new again. It's like a deeper, each time it's an opportunity. We can either cling to who we used to be and mourn and grieve and try to get back there, or we can embrace, like, that is my past. Who am I now? Who am I now? And I'm not a mother with 1 child anymore. I'm a mother with 2 children, and I'm going to expand, and I'm going to be capable, and it's going to be different again. And to really just surrender that control will make the process so much better. And remembering that each phase is temporary, and that's the good and the bad. Like, we don't know the last time they're going to say this word incorrect and super cute. And we don't know the last time they're going to, like, be your little tree frog, to be able to just, like, be on your chest, or the last time they'll ask to pick them up. And so just to remember to really savor those moments, even in the hard, like to spot them, to look for them, even when you're tired, even when you're exhausted, even when it's so hard, to remember to look for the things to be grateful for. That's helpful. And to remember it's temporary. The sleep regressions are temporary. Teething is temporary. Get through it one day at a time. Get through it. If this doesn't work, try something new. What worked during teething for your first one might not work for your second one. Like, just be prepared to surrender it all and to be a fresh, brand new student, and bring the wisdom, bring the things that did work, and be okay with nothing working. And I'll say one of the things I feared the most was, am I gonna lose myself again, lose my body again, lose my energy again. Like all of those things went through my mind. And what I would say is to expect 2 years. Some people might not like hearing that, and some people might not agree with me. I mean, I see Instagram moms all the time popping up like 6 weeks, look at my flat belly. Like that wasn't me. I still look pregnant for I still look 5 months pregnant for like 2 months after I brought the baby home. I gained 51 pounds with both pregnancies. And I remember with our first and with our second babies around the 2-year mark, I felt this new sense of deep breath and sturdiness and catching our footing and this new sense of freedom. So I remember our first pregnancy, I was like, I had this bikini. I'm like, I'm going to be in this 6 weeks. Like, that's what I thought. 6 weeks, and I didn't go to the gym for 2 years. I was completely rocked. And so I would just say, let those fears go with a sense of a promise to yourself that you won't allow it to be like this forever. And you also won't allow the fear of it being like this forever to rob your joy of what you're in right now, because you never get this back. It's gone. It's gone. So it evolves. And it's beautiful every step of the way. And there's nothing like that newborn season. So that's what I would say. What would you say to fathers in what you learned and how to support your wife and your family? Like what would you say to dads who are like, I don't know what my wife needs, or I don't know how to be helpful, or I don't know why she's emotional all the time, or I don't know, like I don't know why the house is always dirty. There might be a lack of perspective. I noticed that a lot. I know that you had a lack of perspective initially with our firstborn, and everyone has different dynamics in their relationships. But I do think that there are certain things that you learned, that you evolved. Like, what would you say to fathers about to welcome a second baby in?
Who your family needs you to be and who you think your family needs you to be sometimes are the same. Sometimes are very different. Specifically, how I thought I needed to show up was I needed to go work really hard all the time and make sure that I'm providing enough and being able to protect this family. And those were some of my beliefs before we found Christ, before we became Christians. And there's still that part of me that is wired. I don't know if it's society. I don't know where that comes from. We're thought of as provider protector a lot of times. And there's truth to it, right? If there's not food on the table, then you're going to have a hungry family, and nobody wants that. And the ways in which that I learned you needed me to be when baby number 2 came around was present, was willing, was actively involved in a lot of the things that I think some people will say, well, that's just the woman's job. And I didn't have some of that perspective until you went out of town for almost 2 weeks, I think. And I had our 6-month-old, just him and I, one-on-one. And I learned, whoa, this is a lot. And it's kind of hard to get anything else done when I had him. Now with 2, wow. I don't have this expectation that the house is going to be clean, food's going to be served, and both kids are going to be taken care of all at the same time while I'm gone. That's a lot to ask. I mean, if I come home and both kids are alive and you're with them and it's just you and you're outnumbered, praise God, because it's a lot to be with the kids. And so who I thought I needed to be and who I actually needed to be, sometimes it's the exact same thing. Sometimes it's the same version. And other times I get to ask you, like, what do you need from me? How can I be of service? What would really help you? And sometimes it's just paying attention. And you learn real quick when it's just you and the kids, what's needed and all the things involved in that. And also really seeking to understand, because a lot of what I think created some problems with our first was, oh, she's a woman, I'm a man, we're different, agree to disagree. When we didn't see it the same way, agree to disagree, versus, hey, let me try and understand. Let me make the effort. Let me really, really put forth the effort to put myself in your shoes and take on some of these things. When those things match up, then there's a lot more love that you feel. There's a lot more respect that I feel, and the marriage feels a lot easier, even amidst the chaos. Because I could say now that we have two, there's tons of chaos. I've never been more exhausted in my life. I don't know if anybody can see, I've got probably huge bags under my eyes. I drink a lot of caffeine. That's the reality that you don't see here on the camera. I've never been more exhausted with two kids. And I don't know how families do it with more. So much respect. And at the same time, our marriage is a 10 out of 10. This is the best it's ever been. And I've never, again, felt more tired. Being a father and working on our business, our new business, doing all the things, because we I think as dads and husbands and providers and protectors, we've got all these identities, and it's all wrapped into this, well, let me go see how much I can do. For me, it's like, let me do more. I need to do more. I need to do more. And it's easy to get lost in that. I need to do more versus like, who do you need me to be? And oftentimes that's, I need you to be present. I need you to be loving. I need you to be a great listener. I need you to be compassionate. And it's kind of this softer version of me that sometimes I may not think it's cool, or I may not think it's the way a man should be, but it's what my family needs of me. And it's who I get to be in those moments that really makes a big difference. We think about how we want to change the world. We think about the impact that we want to make on society, whether it's our business or whether it's changing lives and whatever we do in our career. Oftentimes the biggest ripple that we can have is in our house. And that's just who we choose to be for you and for the kids. And I'm learning that still. I'm still navigating that because I still have this wolf that I want to feed sometimes, which is do more, do at the sacrifice of everything else, because I'm doing it for my family. And at the same time, it's like, is that really who they need me to be in these moments? And being able to turn that switch on and turn it off when it's appropriate is something that is an art. It's a skill, and it's what I would say is the biggest thing that I've learned going from 1 to 2 is with number 1, there were a lot of ways that I didn't show up that I wish, I could do over again. And because we had baby number 2, I'm like, whoa, I'm not doing it that way. I'm doing it differently here. And it's been such a blessing to be able to see that and learn that and be who you guys want me to be, not just who I think you need me to be. All right, so we really enjoyed this conversation with you where we got to talk a little bit about the fears that we had going into having two, a little bit about the effect that it had on our marriage, the effect that it had on us as individuals, and how we get to be who we get to be for our families. Crystal, is there anything else that you want to share before we let them go?
I would say understand that being tired creates more irritability. Instead of keeping score and feeling like one is doing more than the other, trust that you both have a positive intention and communicate as often as possible during this season so that you can be on the same page as often as possible, and trust that you're both willing and you're both going to make the effort to get through this together as a team. We're not opponents, we're on a team, and this can be a really beautiful experience that can really strengthen a marriage, even without all of the time to invest one-on-one with each other. It can be such a beautiful strengthening time for a marriage. That is what we've found.
Now, you may not always be on the same page, but being intentional is what ensures that you're going to be in the same book. And one thing I'll say is make sure you grab the 7 relationship killers that parents struggle with every day and how to stop them before it's too late. Those were 7 dirty dangers that we were completely unaware of, were tearing us apart. Were causing rifts and a deep wedge in our intimacy, in the way that we wanted to show up and how we wanted to show up. And so make sure you check out that guide if you haven't already, because those 7 killers might be causing way more damage. And if you learn how to stop them, if you learn how to work together as a team, then it can absolutely change everything like it did for us. Thanks for hanging out with us today, and we'll see you later. Ciao.